James Carter was just an ordinary man. He had a simple life, a job in a small town, and a habit of cracking jokes even in the worst situations. One evening, as he walked home after a long day, something strange happened. The sky above him glowed with a bright blue light. The air around him turned heavy. His body felt weightless. Before he could react, he was pulled upwards into the sky. When James opened his eyes, he was no longer on Earth. He was inside a large metallic room. The walls shone with a strange silver light, and the air smelled different, clean but unnatural. He was strapped to a table, his arms and legs held down by cold metal restraints. He tried to move, but it was impossible. His heart pounded in his chest. Strange figures stood around him. They were tall, thin, and had large black eyes. Their skin was pale and smooth, almost like glass. They wore long robes that shimmered under the bright white lights above them. They did not speak with words, but James could hear something inside his head. It was like a voice, but it was not human. It was a whisper, a hum, a feeling. "He is awake," one of the beings said. "Yes. Begin the tests," another replied. James took a deep breath. "All right, guys. If this is about my unpaid bills, I promise I'll pay." He grinned, trying to hide his fear. The aliens did not react. They moved around, pressing buttons on glowing panels. Machines hummed and beeped. A long mechanical arm lowered from the ceiling, holding a sharp, needle-like instrument. James swallowed hard. "Okay, this is starting to look like a horror movie. You know, usually the guy in my position screams and begs for mercy. But I'll be honest, I'm more curious than scared." The aliens paused. Their large eyes blinked. They had seen many creatures from different planets. Most screamed in terror. Most begged to be set free. But this human was different. He was calm. He was even making sounds that their machines identified as laughter. "Strange behavior," one of the aliens whispered. "We will proceed," said another. The machine arm moved closer. The needle touched James's skin. A sharp pain shot through his arm, like fire spreading through his veins. It was a test, a way to measure his pain response. James clenched his teeth, his whole body tensed. But then he let out a chuckle. Then a laugh. A real, deep laugh. The aliens stepped back. Their black eyes widened. Their long fingers hovered over the controls. They looked at each other, confused. "He is laughing. This is not a normal reaction." James took a deep breath. The pain was bad. It was really bad. But something about the situation was too bizarre. He was strapped to a table, surrounded by aliens, being poked with needles. It was so ridiculous that he couldn't help but laugh. "Hey," James said between chuckles. "I've had worse. Ever stepped on a Lego? That's real pain." The aliens didn't understand his words, but they could sense his emotions. He was not afraid. He was amused. They increased the intensity of the test. The needle sent a stronger shock through his body. His muscles twitched, his vision blurred. And yet, he laughed harder. The aliens were horrified. They had never seen such a thing. Every species they had studied showed pain in the same way. Screams, panic, fear. But this human, he was different. Pain did not break him. It made him laugh. "Increase power," one alien commanded. The machine hummed again. Another shock surged through James's body. His fingers curled. His back arched. But then he grinned. "You guys should open a spa. This is a great massage." He burst into laughter again. The aliens froze. Their advanced minds could not process what they were witnessing. Was this human immune to pain? Was this laughter a threat? A weapon? They had planned to study him. But now, they were the ones who felt like the test subjects. "This is unnatural," one alien whispered. "We must understand." Another replied. James took a deep breath. The pain was still there, burning like fire under his skin. But he knew one thing: if he could confuse them, he had a chance. A chance to survive. A chance to turn the tables. He just had to keep laughing. The aliens stood frozen, their large black eyes locked onto James. His laughter echoed through the metallic walls of the spaceship. No creature had ever reacted like this before. Every being they had studied screamed in pain, begged for mercy, or passed out. But this human, he laughed. The leader of the aliens, Zivak, turned to his fellow researchers. Increase the intensity. We must understand. One of the aliens hesitated. But what if we break him? We must know the limits of this kind. The machines hummed again. This time, a different mechanical arm lowered. It held a device that emitted a strange blue light. The light pulsed and flickered as it scanned James's body. Then, a sharp pain shot through his nerves. It felt like fire crawling under his skin, spreading to every muscle. James clenched his jaw. His fingers curled into fists. His body tensed. But then, he chuckled. The chuckle turned into a laugh. A real, deep, uncontrollable laugh. The aliens stepped back. Their large heads tilted slightly as they observed. He is in pain, one alien said. Yes, but he laughs. Another responded. James took a deep breath. The pain was unbearable, but his mind worked differently. He thought of all the times he had faced pain before. As a child, he had fallen from trees, scraped his knees, and broken his bones. He had learned to laugh through it. In school, he had been punched in the stomach during a fight. He had laughed in the bully's face, confusing him. And now, in space, surrounded by strange beings, he did the same. You guys need better equipment. This feels like a bad sunburn, James said, grinning. The aliens did not understand the words, but they could hear the mockery in his tone. They increased the power. The blue light became brighter. The pain surged through James's body like electricity. His muscles jerked. His heartbeat raced, but still, he laughed. Zivak turned to his scientists. His body should not handle this level of pain. His heart rate is abnormal, but he does not show signs of breaking. Another alien, smaller in size, stepped forward. Perhaps human brains function differently. Perhaps pain is not the same for them. Zivak nodded. We must test further. Another machine activated. This one released extreme cold. Ice formed on James's skin. His breath became visible as the air around him turned white. The temperature dropped rapidly. A normal creature would scream or beg. A normal creature would tremble in fear. James shivered. His teeth chattered. But then he smirked. Oh, I get it. You guys want to see if I can handle winter. Let me tell you something. I've survived worse. Ever been caught in a snowstorm without a jacket? He laughed. The aliens stared at each other in disbelief. Their minds, trained in science and logic, could not comprehend what they were witnessing. He does not fear pain, one of them said. No, Zivak replied. He uses laughter as a weapon. James took another deep breath. His body was weak. His limbs felt numb. But he had achieved something important. He had confused them. He had scared them. And that meant he still had a chance to survive. He just had to keep laughing. The aliens stood in silence. Their large dark eyes stared at James, who was still strapped to the table. They had seen pain. They had seen creatures suffer. But they had never seen anyone react the way this human did. He laughed. He joked. He acted as if their experiments were nothing more than a game. Zivak, the leader of the HFY, turned to his scientists. This behavior is unnatural. We must understand it. Increase the intensity. One of the aliens hesitated. But what if he breaks? We must know what he is. Proceed. The scientists obeyed. They activated another machine. A large mechanical arm moved above James. It hummed and glowed red. Then, a thin beam of light shot from its tip, pressing against his skin. The heat was unbearable. It burned, but not enough to cause real damage. It was meant to test limits, to measure pain tolerance. James clenched his fists. The pain was sharp, spreading through his body like fire. He felt his skin grow hot, his breath become heavy. He knew this should make him scream, but instead he grinned. Then he chuckled. "You guys ever hear of sunburns? Because this feels like one. You should take me to the beach next time." The Sci-Fi looked at each other. Confusion filled the room. "Why does he laugh?" one alien asked. "This is not logical," another responded. "Perhaps it is a defense mechanism," said a third. Zivak narrowed his eyes. "We must test further. If this is a defense, we must break it." The aliens changed their approach. Instead of pain, they decided to test fear. One of the walls in the room shifted, revealing a large screen. It flickered to life, showing images of terrifying creatures from different planets. Beasts with long, sharp teeth, monsters with glowing red eyes, horrific shadows that crawled in the dark. The Sci-Fi had studied many species, and they knew what fear looked like. They expected James to react like the others, to tremble, to scream, to beg. But James just watched. He tilted his head. "Huh, you guys really need better horror movies. I've seen worse." He smirked. "Ever watched Earth's old horror films? Now those are scary." The aliens were shocked. Fear did not control him. "Increase the fear simulation," Zivak commanded. The screen changed again. This time, it showed Earth, but not as James had known it. It was destroyed, covered in flames, with no signs of life. Cities crumbled, oceans boiled, the sky burned red. The Sci-Fi had created a perfect illusion of destruction. James's smile faded for a second. His fingers twitched. His heartbeat sped up. "Yes," one alien whispered. "Now he feels it." But then, James took a deep breath. He exhaled slowly, and then he laughed. The Sci-Fi froze. James shook his head. "You guys don't get it, do you? We've been through wars, disasters, and the worst things imaginable. But we keep going. We don't stop. We don't give up. And we sure as hell don't let fear control us." The aliens stood motionless. They had never met a species like this. Pain did not break him. Fear did not control them. Zivak clenched his jaw. "This human is dangerous. We must understand why." James grinned. He knew he had them right where he wanted. He just had to keep playing the game. The Sci-Fi aliens stood in a circle around James, their dark, glassy eyes filled with confusion and fear. Never before had they encountered a creature like him. He should have been broken by now. Their experiments should have made him beg for mercy. But James Carter, the human, was still laughing. Zivak, the leader, narrowed his eyes. "This is impossible. No species resists pain and fear like this. He must be hiding something. We need answers." One of the scientists, a smaller alien named Velek, stepped forward. "Perhaps we are asking the wrong questions. Perhaps pain and fear do not work on him as they do on others. Maybe we should understand how his mind works." Zivak hesitated. The Sci-Fi always used pain to gather information. But this was different. James Carter was different. Zivak gave a slow nod. "Very well. We will search his memories." James frowned. Whoa, hold on. I don't like the sound of that." But the aliens ignored him. One of the machines shifted above him, a thin metal rod lowering toward his forehead. It pulsed with a strange blue light. James felt a sharp sting, and suddenly, his mind was no longer his own. The memories begin. The Sci-Fi watched as images flashed before them. Memories of James's life unfolded like a story. They saw a young boy, no older than 5, falling off his bicycle. His knee was scraped, blood dripping down his leg. His mother ran to him, worry in her eyes. But the boy, he laughed. "I flew like a superhero," he had said. The aliens murmured among themselves. Pain, yet he laughed. The memory shifted. Now James was a teenager, standing in a boxing ring. He took a punch to the stomach, falling to his knees. The crowd gasped, waiting for him to cry out. But he grinned through the pain and stood up again. "Nice hit," he told his opponent. Zivak clenched his fists. "This is unnatural." The next memory came. James was older now, in his 20s, working on a construction site. A heavy metal beam slipped and smashed against his foot. The other workers rushed to him, expecting him to scream. Instead, James bit his lip, exhaled sharply, and muttered, "Guess I won't be dancing tonight." The HFY felt a strange sensation, something they had never felt before. Fear, but not fear of pain. Fear of the unknown. The power of the human mind. They are built differently, one scientist whispered. Pain does not control them. Fear does not break them. They adapt. They laugh in the face of suffering. Zivak stepped forward. Enough. End the memory scan. The machine powered down. James blinked, his vision blurry. His head ached, but he could see the change in the aliens. They were unsettled. "Now do you get it?" James said, his voice weak but steady. "Humans are different. We don't give up. We don't break easily. And we don't let fear stop us." The aliens stood in silence. For the first time, they questioned their own superiority. They had always believed pain and fear control the universe. But now, they had found a species that defied those rules. Zivak turned to his scientists. "This human is dangerous. We must decide what to do with him." James grinned. "You're scared, aren't you? Welcome to the human experience." The HFY had never feared any creature before, but now, as they stared at the human who laughed through pain, they realized something terrifying. Humans were stronger than they had ever imagined. The HFY aliens gathered in a dark room, away from James. Their bodies were tense, their minds filled with thoughts they had never considered before. For the first time, they felt fear, not of pain, not of war, but of the unknown power within the human mind. "We must decide what to do," Zivak said. His voice was sharp, filled with frustration. "This human is dangerous. He does not break. He does not fear. If all humans are like him, our knowledge of pain and control is useless." A scientist, Velik, spoke. "We have studied thousands of species. None have resisted us like this. Perhaps the human brain functions in a way we cannot understand. If we cannot control them, we must destroy them." Another HFY said. "Humans could be a threat to the universe." Silence filled the room. The idea of eliminating humans was logical, but something felt different this time. The HFY were not just scientists. They were rulers of knowledge. They had never feared any species before. But now, standing in the shadows of their own doubts, they hesitated. James's escape plan. Meanwhile, James sat in his metal chair, still strapped down, but his mind was racing. He knew the aliens were confused. They didn't know what to do with him. That gave him an advantage. He had tested their patience. He had pushed their limits. Now, it was time to take action. James had spent hours watching the aliens, learning their habits. He had noticed that the security in his cell was not perfect. The restraints around his wrists were tight, but not unbreakable. And he had seen the way the aliens controlled their machines, touch-sensitive panels that responded to specific hand movements. He took a deep breath. "All right, James, time to put this human brain to work." With slow, careful movements, he began to twist his wrist. The pain shot through his arm, but he gritted his teeth. He had felt worse. He had survived worse. With one final twist, he pulled his hand free. The metal strap clanked against the chair. His other hand followed quickly, then his legs. He was free. James moved fast, keeping his steps quiet. The room was dark, the machines humming softly. He had to find a way out before the aliens returned. He scanned the walls. There, a control panel. If he could access it, maybe he could open the doors. He pressed his fingers against the screen. Nothing happened. The symbols were unreadable. "Come on," he muttered. "Think." Then he remembered. The HFY used their three-fingered hands to control the machines. He needed to mimic them. James curled two fingers, keeping three extended, and swiped across the panel. The screen blinked. A soft beep sounded. And then, a door slid open. The chase begins. Alarms blared through the spaceship. Red lights flashed, and the HFY turned toward the noise. "He has escaped," Zivak shouted. James ran down the hall. His heart pounded, but he couldn't stop. He didn't know where he was going, but anywhere was better than the experiment room. Behind him, he heard the aliens shouting in their strange language. "Come on, legs, don't fail me now," he said to himself. He turned a corner and stopped. In front of him stood a large window, showing the vast darkness of space. The sight was overwhelming. He was far from Earth, far from home. But he wasn't giving up. He spotted another control panel. If he could find a way to the escape pods, he might have a chance. He pressed the panel, mimicking the alien hand movements again. This time, a map appeared. It showed different sections of the ship. There, an escape bay. But before he could move, Zivak and a group of HFY appeared behind him. "Stop! You cannot escape," Zivak ordered. James turned to face them, breathing heavily. "You guys don't get it, do you? You can test me all you want. You can try to break me. But humans don't break that easily." Zivak narrowed his eyes. "You are not like other species. Pain does not weaken you. Fear does not stop you. Why?" James smirked. "Because we don't let it. We fight. We survive. And we keep going, no matter what. That's what makes us human." The HFY hesitated. For the first time, they did not know what to do. James took his chance. He lunged toward the escape bay door and slammed his hand against the panel. The door slid open. Without looking back, he ran inside. The final decision. Zivak watched as James entered the escape pod. He could stop him. He could order his soldiers to fire. But something inside him hesitated. The human had shown them something they had never understood before. Strength was not just about power. It was not about control. It was about resilience. "Let him go," Zivak finally said. The other HFY looked at him in shock. "But he will return to his people. They will know about us." "Yes," Zivak said. "And one day we may face them again. But now we have learned something greater than pain or fear. We have learned that there are species we cannot control. And that knowledge is more valuable than his life." The escape pod launched, shooting into space. James gripped the controls, his heart still racing. He had done it. He had survived. As the spaceship disappeared behind him, he let out a breath and laughed. Well, that was one hell of a first contact. Back on the HFY ship, Zivak watched the pod vanish into the stars. "Humans," he whispered. "The universe will never be the same again." And in that moment, the HFY realized the truth. The most dangerous species in the universe was not the strongest. It was the one that refused to break.